Hi, Amy. How you going today?
Hello, I'm doing pretty well, thanks.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy lady with a family and all your musical escapades, and so I do appreciate your time. So my first question, with all my guests at the moment is, how are you doing in the pandemic? Are you staying safe? And how are you how and your family sort of adapting to this sort of period?
Yeah, um, uh, it's been a big adjustment, as I'm sure it has been for everybody. I feel like now we're starting to get a handle on it, but at the same time, it's kind of like you can't ever get too comfortable with it because things can change so rapidly. So I think we've just got used to having to be flexible,
Yes.
and that's kind of the best that you can do at the moment. I know when everything kind of first hit, we actually moved house kind of right in the middle of all of
Oh,
that.
really?
So it was sort of a distraction in a way, because I had that thing to focus on. But as soon as we kind of started to get settled, I just felt really paralyzed and sort of like I don't know what to do with myself now. And because there were other changes happening, obviously I have a daughter who's a school age. She's in kindergarten, and so I was having to adjust to her learning from home. And
Yes.
um, yeah, so there was a lot to kind of try and manage in that first little period. And obviously the everybody losing all their gigs, and I had
Yes.
quite a lot of touring lined up for this year, which obviously all completely fell apart. So yeah, just having to rethink, rebalance, refocus, and yeah, it's been interesting to see how it's impacted us and the people around us as well.
Yes. And the thing is, it's just interesting that we've got all this technology online that we've never sort of used or we've taken for granted, and now all of a sudden it's like this thing has happened, and all of a sudden we're doing, you know, I've seen bands do drive-ins, where they play, or they're playing online.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've done as well? Like, have you done the
I
online sort of?
Yeah, I've done a little bit, not as much as some people have. Some people have really sort of dived into it. And I completely agree with you there. I think it's interesting that we had this technology available to us before, but we weren't
Yes.
really using it optimally. Now people have kind of been forced into doing that. So it's been, I guess, positive in that way that
Yeah.
we are using it the way that we should be. But yeah, I struggle a little bit with the live stream stuff,
Mm.
because it just feels really cold.
Yes.
And I'm used to that, especially with my style of music. It's a very intimate style where I'm usually playing to kind of small but warm rooms of people.
Yes.
To not have that kind of immediate feedback is really strange.
Yes.
And it's nice that people kind of comment and like things and stuff, and that's lovely. But it just feels really different. And
Yes.
so I'm trying to adjust to that. I know it's something that I just have to get used to.
Yes.
But yeah, some people do it a lot better than I do.
And speaking of which, is it difficult to have you done the online where you actually have got three or four guys or people in different rooms or different areas of the world? Is it difficult to sync all that
um,
together?
I don't I don't know that you can actually do that live. Most of the
Right.
software that is available, I mean, and because of the nature of internet connections and things like that,
Yes.
and
Yes.
delays, it's just impossible to kind of. I know I sat down with a band once and tried to do some kind of Zoom rehearsal, which was a complete fail because it,
Right.
it just it just doesn't work. Even just trying to clap together in time would be impossible. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's interesting in that respect. I have done live streams where there's like this, the sound operator is in a different room, obviously, so that they can kind of monitor how it sounds on the other side. But
Yes.
yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
Yes.
We're
It
all,
is.
we're all experimenting and trying new
Yes.
things.
Yeah, and not having that sort of, the emotion and, seeing people's faces and, getting that energy and vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes live music so amazing, is that
Exactly.
being in that moment in the room, that you can't emulate that in any way. Yeah.
Yes. And do you think that? Well, I hope I'm one. I'll put my hand up that. I take it for granted for live music now, and now I can't wait. I can't wait to get back and play music and go and watch live music myself. I just can't wait. I'm just chomping at the bit now, and I'm gonna try and do it more now. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and I hope more people feel like that. I hope more people realize what they've been missing. I'm the same. I can't wait to just go out there and immerse myself in live music again when that becomes a possibility. I miss it so much from both sides. I love being an audience member as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that you have rescheduled your dates that you're supposed to have for now. So? Are they going ahead, or is it still up in the air?
But they keep getting rescheduled over and over again. Yeah, it's really frustrating, and there's nothing you could do about it. It's not anybody's fault. It's just, it is what it is. So I had a tour booked with a band that it's actually a band that I used to tour with years ago with Jon English,
right?
The late great Jon English, and we've reworked a new show that we're doing that we were going to do with him, obviously, just before he passed. So it's been in the works for a number of years, and we've been rehearsing quite actively. And yeah, it's sort of, the whole thing fell apart. I think we were supposed to start touring in June, and then they started putting the dates back to like September, October.
Yes.
And now everything is next year. Now everything is moved to next year. So, and I mean, who knows whether that's going to happen either. But for now, that's when they're booked in. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hope, fingers crossed, that it's all ready to go for next year, and it's all happening. So, I have Newcastle listeners, but I also have lots of international listeners as well. So I think we should sort of talk a little bit about Amy Vee and her story. So I couldn't find, but everywhere that I look, it says that you're from Newcastle. Were you born in Newcastle, or did you come? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so I was born in Newcastle.
Right.
But when I was a kid, my family moved to Tamworth. So I actually did most of my schooling up there. My dad started a business, and my dad's in the music industry as well. So he was an agent and a venue consultant up that way. So so I grew up there in northwest New South Wales, and obviously, Tamworth's a music city,
Yes.
predominantly country music.
Yes.
Which I have a funny kind of love-hate relationship with. I as a teen, I hated it, and I think because of it, it was such an interruption to life. At that age, when we'd get these swarms of people coming to town for 2 weeks of the year, and I wasn't into the music, and I didn't get it. But it's funny now, like looking back, it has influenced me in many ways, like the kind of storytelling aspects of country music, and I admire that, and the rawness and the realness of it, that people are actually telling their stories. I really love that about it. And my brother's in a country band now.
Yes, I was going to ask that.
Well, so,
yes.
Yeah, and so it's funny, and I still go back there during the festival and usually play some shows, do some songwriter kind of showcase things, and I'm a bit of a black sheep. Like I don't really fit squarely into the country genre, but they're very accepting of me, so I'm lucky.
Well, the thing is that I like about the music festival, and I'm the same. I'm not really a country music fan. I respect the music, and good music is good music, in my opinion. So there's a lot of great talent that go up there every single year, and representing. And look what Keith Urban's doing overseas. I mean, he's just taken it to another level. But I think people shouldn't, unless they've been up there and gone to the country festival. I got a whole different appreciation of it, because it's not just country music. It's all styles of music, just going up there, sitting on you walk down the main street, and there's people with open guitar cases, or rappers, all different styles of music. And I didn't think that, obviously country music is the main sort of thing up there, but I didn't realize that it was all different styles as well, like going up there and just to sleep in a tent and camp out there for a couple of days on a farm. The whole experience is just so cool. So I really got a whole different look at it, and look what it's done for some of the people up there. I mean, the people that win the golden what is it? The guitar, golden guitar. Yeah. So, have you actually played up played at the festival?
Yeah. I try and play there every year if I can.
Yeah.
Like I said, I tend to jump on the sort of songwriting gigs. There's a lot of kind of in the round style things that happen up there that I have some friends who kind of put those on. So if they let me, I'll get up and play a few songs. I enjoy just being part of it. It's actually, it kind of makes you feel like you're part of a community as well as a musician. It's having those opportunities just to kind of hang out with other like-minded people is actually really special, because it doesn't happen a lot. We're all doing our own things. We've all got gigs on at the same time, and so it can be hard to kind of have that sense of community, because we tend to work in isolation. I think that stuff is important. Yeah.
And you said that your dad was involved in music as well. So was that one of the reasons why, when you were young, as you got into it, like, first playing guitar, was it his influence?
Yeah, pretty much. He was playing in bands before I was born, and I just grew up with there always being music around. He was always off on weekends doing gigs. There was always instruments around the house. My parents put me into, because I took an interest in music from a young age, and they put me into piano lessons when it was like 5 or 6. And I studied classical piano, and I was very shy, and I never liked performing in front of people. So my dad kind of pushed me into, when I was in my early teens, sort of said, "Oh, maybe you should think about joining a band." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." So, because I had a keyboard then, he's like, "You play keys and do a bit of singing and stuff." So yeah, he definitely gently kind of pushed me into that stuff, and I wasn't keen at first, but I'm really grateful for that now, because obviously it's something I became very passionate about. Yes. I still, I wouldn't say I'm an overly confident performer, but I've come a long way since then, obviously.
And speaking of that, how did you sort of overcome those being nervous and in front of people? How did you overcome that? Was it just over time, or did you, was it your dad's influence again that did that, or?
I think it was just doing it. It's just the constant kind of practice, and I think it just becomes a more natural thing for you to do after a while. And it's funny, like now, I wouldn't say I get nerves so much, especially doing my own stuff, because it feels very natural and very organic and part of me to be sharing that stuff. But yeah, I think the best way to overcome the nerves or the anxiety is just to keep doing it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the one thing that I used to have was making sure that all my equipment was right. That I had my guitar tuned properly, that I had another guitar ready to go if I broke a string, or, all the electrical sort of side of it. So, I got more worried before the gig, but when I get to see the band and the guys, and it's like, okay, this is cool now. Okay.
Absolutely. I hear you. I'm a bit the same. I kind of get anxious before the gig, but as soon as you step onto stage, it's like, oh, okay.
Yes.
I know this. I'm home now. Yeah. Yeah.
And tell me, like guitar is a big part of your sort of music
Yeah.
ever since you've started. So how was that process of learning guitar? Did you have someone teach you, or because it's not easy thing to do? Like,
I think having the kind of theory background already made it easier to apply to a new instrument. I was always interested in guitar because I felt really stuck playing keys on stage. You can't kind of move around much, and it's a big instrument to kind of carry. And I just liked the freedom of a guitar. But also, you know, I kind of started teaching myself a little bit, and I loved being able to make mistakes and just kind of find new sounds and new voicings and things by just you know, by accident. So yeah, I sort of started teaching myself, and my dad, you know, showed me a few things because he plays really well. And then I was in a band when I first kind of moved back to Newcastle. I came back to study, to go to uni, and
right.
I was playing in a band back then, and the guitarist was he had like a jazz background. He was an amazing guitarist, and so he kind of showed me a few really cool chords that weren't in my repertoire. You know, they were kind of more jazz chords, and I loved that. I was obsessed with that. So that kind of carried me a bit further, and he'd show me some technique stuff as well, and the scales and things. Yeah, and it just kind of went from there. But I still don't really think, even though I've played guitar for a long time, I don't think of myself as a guitarist.
Yes.
You know, it's my main instrument. It's what I write on and everything. But yeah, there's still things that I find new about it, and I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's the one thing that I wanted to ask, and I know it's a bit of a cliche sort of question, but everybody has a different way of designing or creating a song. So, like with you, is it like a melody, or is it the guitar riff first, or how do you sort of set that up? Like, and has that changed over time? Like, with your sort of creating music?
Yeah. You get asked that question a lot when you're a songwriter. Like, how do you approach the song? Yeah. It varies for me. Sometimes I'd probably say more often than not the melody kind of comes first. Although I don't know.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it all kind of happens together in a weird mess, and then you just kind of organize it. But yeah, and sometimes it's lyrically driven. You know, it might be just there's something I really want to say, and so some words kind of come out, and I'll structure a few things around that. But I like to try and make the music and the words and the melody all kind of happen at the same time, because then they seem to gel the best. I know I've had some experience lately because I've been doing a lot of writing in the last few months.
Yes.
Where because you know, time.
Yeah.
Where I'll actually kind of construct almost a whole song with no lyrics, and then I find myself stuck because I've got this melody that I somehow have to try and wedge these words into, you know. So it kind of works against you in that way. So yeah, I try and make them happen around the same time-ish if I can, but you know, it changes. Yeah.
So you were in Tamworth. You're playing music. So was it like playing just in Tamworth, or was it like going out to sort of Lismore and Ballina, those sort of areas?
Well, I mean, I started gigging when I was really young, and just playing in like covers bands and stuff. And the little band that I was playing with were all around the same age, like early teens.
Yes.
We wrote a few songs and we recorded them, and that's what got me really interested in songwriting. But then I actually moved back to Newcastle when I was 18, I think. To go to uni, and then, you know, same thing. I was just singing in some bands and started doing a bit of writing, and I there was a couple of these like songwriter showcase nights that were happening. They were almost like an open mic style thing. There was a guy from Sydney who used to come up and run them, and I used to go and watch, and I was always mesmerized by these, you know, people who got up and sang their own songs. And so I was like, I really want to try this, but I'm super nervous about it. And so he kind of gave me a couple of spots, and then I got up and played, and the response was really positive, and he was really amazing and really supportive. And I started doing some more of those in Sydney, and it just kind of like grew from there. So yeah, I definitely always had this interest in writing and performing my own songs. But yeah, that's kind of what got me started, I guess.
Yeah, right. And just going through your Facebook, I was just having a look through, and I saw a common favorite musician and favorite band. It was actually one of my first cassettes. Actually, it was I saw a picture of you and Susie DeMarchi of the Baby Animals.
Yeah.
So this is going a way back.
Yeah.
So huge influence on you.
Yeah, I think I discovered Baby Animals when I was about 14, I think, 13 or 14. It was a drummer from another band. He actually gave me a cassette. I think it was a bootleg.
Yeah. Right.
And he's like, "Oh, you should listen to this band. The chick in it is really cool. You really dig her." And I did. I totally. She's a goddess. She's amazing. Yeah, and I think, I played that cassette to death and sang along with it every opportunity that I could. And I did get to meet them around that age. I think I was about 14 or 15 when I met them and saw them play. Yeah, it's funny though, like, obviously they were very kind of rock band.
Yeah.
But my influences have been quite diverse. Like I obviously steer towards the kind of singer-songwriter types. But I think like throughout my teens and early 20s, I was really influenced by people like Jeff Buckley, and I loved Ani DeFranco because she kind of had this fierce independence, and kind of her story was always she did it her way, and I loved that about her. So yeah, I always kind of leaned towards that sort of stuff, and then a lot of that was very kind of acoustic and kind of mellow styles. So I tended to go in that direction. But in saying that, I loved rock bands. I was into like Nine Inch Nails, and I loved like Tool and stuff like that. I loved a lot of the grunge stuff as well. Soundgarden and all that stuff. I was a massive Chris Cornell fan. So yeah, it's funny. Like, yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and I still love classical music as well. Because I grew up on that, and I studied it at school, and I'm a big fan of like the Romantic composers, and so I still listen to a lot of classical music. So I try to keep my influences really broad, and I think that helps me to define my sound, because I then have to find my own way of bringing that all together into something.
Yes. And it's interesting. I think for music, it's also like a mood thing. Like sometimes you won't have heard a CD for 6 months, and it's like, you know what, I want to get that CD out. Just sometimes it's just a feel and being in the mood. So yeah, I totally understand. And like we said before, good music is good music. Doesn't matter what sort of style it is. You just gotta if it makes you feel good, or if it's some sort of memory, that you had with that song,
Yeah.
Go with it.
It doesn't even have to be feel good. If it just makes you feel something,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you come to Newcastle for the first time. Was it for study?
Yeah. So I came back to do. It's funny. I really wanted to study law, but I had the marks to kind of do it at the university up near where I was living, but I didn't want to live up there. I wanted to come back to Newcastle. So my marks weren't good enough, and so I thought, I'm just going to do an arts degree for a year and see how that goes. And then I took. So I was studying like drama, and because I love drama, I do some acting as well as the music stuff. And but I started studying psychology, and I really was interested in that. So I then changed my degree and ended up doing a Bachelor of Psych, which kind of led me into a whole other career path. So I've worked in mental health for over 13 years, and I have actually become really passionate about the ways that mental health and music intersect. So and I think like you hear a lot of stuff these days about like music therapy and how music can help people with their mental health. But the thing that I'm super interested in is how do we support the mental health of the people making the music?
Yes.
Because, you know, we know that and I'm sure you know this anecdotally as well, that we're a high-risk population. You know, we have a whole range of unique needs and challenges that aren't necessarily met by kind of mainstream interventions and methods. So that's kind of where I'm finding myself at the moment, is finding ways to support people in my industry with their well-being. Yeah.
And especially lately, I mean, I've only just come back to Newcastle before the pandemic. But while I was away, it was the bushfires, it was the pandemic. So for people in Australia, and we talked about it before with the musicians not being able to work. So have you been, you know, really busy with work at the moment?
Yeah, so I actually, the job that I was in, where I got to work on a range of different sort of mental health programs, I actually left in February.
Right.
Thinking that I was going to be focusing all my energy on my music career.
Music, right.
Amazing timing. But I still do some volunteer work. I'm actually a volunteer board member for an organisation called Listen Up Music, which is a music and mental health charity.
Now, can we talk a bit about that, because you're like a member of the board, right?
Yeah. So basically, the thing with Listen Up is the thing that they're really great at, their strength, I would say, is that they build community. So they're all about bringing together people who are working in music or people who are looking to work in music, and just kind of like getting them to support each other and to tell their stories, because you know, we all know this. We've all had friends in the music industry who have been through tough times, if we haven't ourselves, and everybody has a story. So it kind of started out that way. It was like creating this kind of safe environment for people to do that, and creating events where people could get together and do that sort of thing. And they have an annual songwriting competition, which usually has some kind of mental health theme, and people write to that. So it's been going on for a number of years now. It's been really, really great to see the response to that, like the people who enter, the stories that they tell, and then the friendships and the communities that they build as a result of that is just amazing. And I think, like I said before, I think that's the thing that's really lacking, particularly for independent musicians. It's just that feeling of belonging to something, and to having that connection with other people, because we would get so focused and so kind of working in our own little silos, and you know, we're constantly kind of on the wheel, you know, trying to spin the wheel, and we forget that we have to connect with people. So that's one thing I really admire about the work that Listen Up Music do. And they're just like a fantastic bunch of people as well. They'll get behind anything, anyone's project, you know, they'll give you a boost. So so that's been really fun, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where that goes now, because obviously a lot of that work was kind of centered around events, so we're having to rethink how we do things in that sense. And they're also about to start doing some kind of training events for people in the music industry as well, which now we have to kind of rethink as well, because it was all kind of face to face. So but you know, they're still doing lots of things. They do have a festival that's running next year, which is a very small scale festival. It's all being run in a very safe kind of way. And again, it's kind of the focus is on music and mental health. So they're going to have a whole bunch of resources there for people. They've got people coming up and telling their stories, as well as kind of music and comedy stages and all kinds of things. Like it's going to be so much fun. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. So you know, there's that, and then I'm also doing a master's at the moment. I'm doing a master's in mental health, which was the other thing I kind of pivoted towards after I finished work. Was like, I'm going to go do some study. So and I've just written a paper, which is like a critical literature review of all the interventions that are or the responses to interventions that are currently available to people in the music industry, basically. So I'm working to get that published with a couple of researchers from across. Yeah,
that's really great.
And
Amy.
it's like a first of its kind of thing, because so often we get forgotten in these conversations, you know.
Yes.
And I want to shine a spotlight on that, because I think we're really good at identifying that there's a problem.
Yes.
Now we're like, yeah, everybody, you know, we're not doing well, but nobody's talking about what we do about that. How do we respond to it? How do we make it better? And that's what I'm really interested in. So anything I can do to kind of further that work, that's kind of where I'm going to focus my energy.
That's great. That's really, really inspiring. That's great, Amy. And so speaking of coming back to Newcastle and doing your study and then starting music again, I'm always interested to get your Newcastle musicians' opinions on the state of the sort of music scene at the moment in Newcastle. Now, I don't live in Newcastle at the moment, so I'm coming back, and I've got a couple of friends that are like, you know, who are the bands that I should go and see? Who are the artists that I should go and see? But before, it was booming. It was like you go to so many different venues. You can see music. You could walk down to, you know, different bars and pubs and clubs and venues and see it. Now it's, you know, so I want to get your sort of opinion on that, and why has it changed, or you know, can I get your opinion on that?
Sure. I don't think that is a situation unique to Newcastle.
Yes.
I see that happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, live music isn't what it was 10,
why
20 years ago.
Why is that, Amy?
Oh, look. I think there are a whole range of reasons. I mean, it's, you know, apart from just a general kind of cultural shift, I think, you know, so much of the entertainment that we get now is not, we don't even need to leave our homes for.
Yeah,
so,
that's it. Yes.
You know, that plays a huge part. And just, you know, changes in venues and the things that they want to focus on and that kind of stuff. But I think it's just a cultural change, and it's something that we kind of have to adapt to.
Yes.
In saying that, though, I don't. Even though the live music culture has changed, I think there are still amazing amounts of live music available to go and watch and be part of. That hasn't gone away, and I think there are still people who do want to support that. It's just about kind of finding your audience now. You have to work a little bit harder to find.
Yes.
Which, you know, that's just how it is, and we have to find new ways to get to those people, because they're not just going down to their local every Friday night or whatever. They've got a lot of things competing for their interest. So, but music will always be a part of our lives. That's not going to go away. That's not going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed that you've got rescheduled gigs for the Cambridge, and that was one of my stomping grounds.
Oh yeah.
And I went in there last year, and I couldn't believe how much it's changed. You know, it's almost like a Newcastle music museum now, with all the instruments and the site. I thought that was really, really good. So, so you've played lots in Newcastle, but you've also done lots of overseas touring as well. You've been to the U.K, the U.S, I do believe.
Yeah, not for a while. I haven't been to the US for a while.
Right.
But yeah, I have done a little bit of overseas touring. It's funny, like I remember the first time I put together a tour for the UK, and at the time just thinking, this is actually so much easier than trying to tour in Australia, because there are, you know, obviously tons more venues, everything's closer together. There's a much larger population, so there's a more likely chance that you'll get an audience. So yeah, I loved that. I haven't actually toured over there for a while. I mean, I've kind of done a few individual shows. I did a show in London last year, I think it was, in like September, October, just because I happened to be going there, and I just thought, well, I'll try and jump on to a gig. And it was great. It was actually with another expat, another Australian who was living there. And I was right in the heart of London. It was great just to kind of be there and be part of that. But again, I don't think, I think it's everywhere, this situation where it's getting increasingly harder to kind of get people into your show, like to get them sitting down in front of you and watching, because it's just saturated with so many things to kind of keep them occupied. It's like, and I feel like people's attention spans are kind of shrinking as well. That thing where you would just sit down for a few hours and watch something. I feel like people don't do that as much anymore. They don't allow themselves to kind of be immersed in something. It's all just kind of these things flying past them, every few minutes, that they've got used to that. That's how they kind of consume now. But it's interesting.
So going back to Newcastle. So you said that you formed a band here in Newcastle, and was that your first EP with that band?
Yeah, so my first kind of original band, the band that I formed around my music, they were called The Virtues, and we had we did an EP to begin with, and then we won this big music prize way back then, and which kind of helped us with a few things. There was a couple of little industry kind of boosts that it gave us that allowed us to go and record an album, and I toured with them for a while. And then I just kind of, as much as I loved the whole band situation, we were kind of like, we'd sort of become this indie band, and I kept finding myself in my writing just leaning back more into that kind of singer-songwriter style.
Yes.
So I decided to just kind of refocus, and I stripped everything back again and went out and did like a solo EP. And then
is that Sleepy Days?
Sleeping Dogs Lie, it's called.
Sleeping Dogs, yes, right. Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah, so that was actually the first, when I went to the US and Canada, was around the time that sort of came out.
Right.
And I was doing shows by myself again, and I had a loop pedal, which back then not many people had. Seems like every man and his dog's got one now. But, back then they were quite novel. So I was just using that and touring around with my loop pedal, and then I gathered a bit of momentum through that, with some people who were kind of digging what I was doing, and so I managed to crowdfund to do a full album.
Yes.
Which I think was 2013, and again, the cycle kind of continues. Once you kind of do an album, then you go out and tour, and I had a completely different band for that situation. So we toured the album in sort of most capital cities, and I had like a 6-piece band. I had a couple of string players, and
so that's a question that I wanted to ask Amy. How do you sort of pick the players that you want for your band? I mean, are they session players? Are they friends? How does it all work?
Bit of both, yeah. So a couple of those guys, like the bass player in that band, he actually played on the record, and the string players played on the record as well. But they were friends of mine. Yes. And then it was funny, like the drummer and the guitarist actually approached me. They had been to a few of my shows, and they were like, they had a different band, but they were like, we really love your stuff, and if we can ever do anything together, if you ever want us to come and play with you. And I actually loved the stuff that they were doing, so I was like, let's try it out, Yes. And they were amazing. So yeah, they ended up being part of that touring band at the time. And then, so after all of that happened, that was about probably a year later was when I had my first child.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of take a step back at that point from touring for a little while. But it was good because, obviously when your life changes, your story changes, and you start to write differently. And so it was good for me, and there was a lot of growth during that period. And then it ended up being quite a long hiatus. I think it was 2013 was the Fits and Starts album, and then my next one, Same Skin, came out last year, so there was like 6 years in between them. which in musician years is a long time.
That's a long time. That's almost
people forget who you are.
Yeah, it's almost like a Metallica or something like that, where they take they tour for 3 years and then takes them a year to write the album, and then, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was a long break. I mean, I was doing a lot of stuff in that time. I was playing in other people's bands, and like I said, I toured with Jon English for a number of years during that time, and so I was still busy, but just wasn't doing my stuff.
So what does it mean? What did it mean to you to be a part of Jon English? I mean, he's such an Australian icon in the music world. So what was that experience like when you first met him? You know?
Yeah, I actually met Jon long before we were touring together, because he's quite involved in music theatre as well. He'd done a lot of stuff. Obviously, in his early days, his big break was doing Jesus Christ Superstar, and
yes.
And he writes. He was writing musicals as well, and he had a show called Buskers and Angels, which he asked me to be a part of in, I think, maybe 2000 and, I want to say 8 or 9, somewhere around there. So I ended up starring in this show that he'd written here in Newcastle. We did a season here, and that's when I really kind of got to work with him for the first time. He was in the show as well. He was kind of playing one of the other characters, and then it wasn't long after that he had another show that he'd put together previously called The Rock Show, which was like a touring theatrical production.
Right.
Basically a kind of bit of a story of music of the 60s and 70s, stuff that had influenced him, and obviously some of his material as well. And they had this massive band. I think it was like an 8 or 9 piece band of young kind of multi-instrumentalists. And the girl who was singing in the show was leaving, and they were like, "Do you want to come and sing in the show?" And I was like, "It sounds amazing. I'll jump on." So I toured with him all around the country, all over the place with that show. And then there was a couple of other iterations of that. So there was like the second version of that, and then there was another band that did like club shows, and then there was like a smaller band that did acoustic shows. The Sixes Enough, we were called. And then I did some trio gigs with him as well. So I ended up sort of becoming one of the staples in his touring band.
Wow.
And he had a big show planned, which was going to be the same sort of idea, but based around Australian music. So it was like the Australian edition of The Rock Show. And we had rehearsed all of that, and we'd actually played our first kind of test show, and it went really well. And then I think maybe a week or two after that was when he passed away. So he'd actually, he was due to travel to Sweden. He was about to do a new album, which was a big deal because he hadn't actually had any new material for many years. So he had all this new stuff that he was about to record, and so it was all very, very sudden. But yeah, I am so grateful for that time that I had with him. I learned so much, and he had a billion stories. He had so many stories.
I'm sure he did. Yes.
And he was such a great storyteller as well. He was just mesmerizing to watch and to listen to, and hysterical and funny, and just a really great person to be around.
And it seems to be the common theme about all these people that we meet in music. They're just down to earth, nice, gentle. Well, not sometimes gentle, but just nice people, and all doing the same thing. And it just goes to show, even the high profile celebrities are even just nice people. You know what I mean? So
that's one thing I loved about him was how much he loved being around his fans as well. Like every show, we always came out after every show and he signed stuff, and he would wait. There'd be lines, all the way around the building, and he would wait until the last person had left. He was so personable in that way, and I really admired that about him.
Yeah, right. So we've got to the 2013. So Fits and Starts.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yep.
So you did a tour of that. You've done with Jon English. So 6 years between releases. So what was your approach for the last year's album? Did you come in with all different ideas? Was it some old material, or was it all just new material for the latest album?
It was a bit of a mix. So I'd actually put a single out in 2016 called 10 Years.
Right.
And that was on the album. And there are a couple of songs that I wrote around the same time as that ended up being on the album. But other than that, there was, obviously some stuff that I wrote specifically for the album as well. I didn't really, when I put 10 Years out, I didn't know that there was going to be an album. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know what I was doing at that stage. I was just like, kind of, I guess I should put something new out. And I was obviously feeling a lot of stuff because we just lost John, and there was a whole lot of other stuff going on in my life, and I was feeling the urge to write, but I didn't know, I didn't have a plan for it. It was just like, I'm just going to put stuff out there. And it was at that time I was starting to think, like, is it even worth doing albums anymore? Like, I was having that kind of crisis that I think we all go through, where it's like, what is the point of putting out albums, because it feels like people are only listening to singles now. So yeah, it all sort of happened a bit.
And again, why has that changed? Why is it just singles now? Why, gone are the days where you're buying the album and it's like, yes, go to your record store, JB Hi-Fi or something like that. Again, it's just modern times.
Yeah, I mean, most people consume music now through streaming services, yes, so exactly. We don't have that luxury of people being forced to kind of sit down and listen to your entire your entire album, because they can just click to whatever they want to listen to next.
But I did see that you were listening to the vinyl of it.
Yeah, so I have a vinyl version of Same Skin, my last album.
Yes.
And a lot of people have bought that, which is amazing, because I think for that reason, the fact that they've actually invested in it that much that they want to sit there and listen to it in that way, that's really amazing. And I love vinyl now too. I love buying vinyl of new albums that are coming out.
Yes.
For that reason, because you have to listen to it. And that's beautiful, and it has such an amazing sound, as you know. It kind of takes you into a different headspace, I think, when you're listening to vinyl.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know, and the whole streaming model obviously has its problems for us as artists, and we're seeing that more and more. This kind of frustration with. Why am I having to give my art away for free? And there's a guy sitting at the top who's like making billions of dollars, literally. It all seems a little bit unbalanced, but I'm not sure what the answer is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then you bring that album out in 2019. And did you get to go and tour for this album before sort of like the bushfires and the pandemic? I did see a couple of shows like locally, but did you get a chance to go around Australia?
A little bit. So I did a small tour where I think there were like 7 or 8 dates, a few down in Victoria, a couple up in Queensland, and mostly kind of East Coast.
Yes.
And that was around sort of late last year. And then my intention had been to expand on that in 2020. And I hadn't really locked anything in before the kind of pandemic stuff happened, so it just never eventuated. Again, that was just one of the other things that was on my list of things to do.
Yes.
It just couldn't happen. But it's in some ways it's good in that it's forced me to kind of go, well, there's nothing left I can do now other than write. So. Yes. So I've definitely been a lot more productive in that sense than I would have been if I had been out touring the album.
Yeah, right. And one thing that now you said that you have a family now, you've got an album out, you're doing stage, plays. How do you balance this now? Going up and down the East Coast with a family, kids in school, and how do you balance this?
It's tricky. It has its challenges. I mean, I'm super lucky that my partner is very supportive, and he can kind of like carry the weight when I'm away. But we try to sort of structure it around the rest of our life so that I'm not away for like long periods of time. It tends to be just like a weekend or a few days at most.
Right.
So you kind of go out in little bursts. But I mean, who knows what that's going to look like in the next year or two.
That's right. That's right. And I'm just looking through, some of the dates here that you had. You were a part of the Lizottes benefit raise for the bushfires. It says here that they raised $25,000. Is that true?
Yeah. That was amazing. That was such a special day. I was one of many artists who were performing that day. And like there's some quite big name artists and a lot of local artists as well. And it was really, really special. There's lots of people there.
Yes.
Everybody. It was just such a lovely, positive vibe in the room as well. Because everybody was there for a good reason. And that was really special. That one.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more that I saw, and it's recently in 2020. Must have been just before the pandemic. You were in a popular theatre. It says the very popular theatre company, and you played you were part of Chess.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. It didn't happen.
Oh, it didn't happen.
It was literally like a week out.
Right.
So we were fully rehearsed and ready to go. Right. And the whole thing got pulled. So that's now been rescheduled to February.
Right.
Coming February. That was a real shame because we worked really hard on that. And we had a couple of big theatre stars that we'd kind of brought in to do the show. David Harris, who is Australian but has been living in New York doing Broadway stuff, and he was coming back to do it. And Sylvie Palladino, who's from Melbourne, was coming up to do it, play the lead. And it was going to be really, really special. But was it to be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Next year.
Next year.
Something to look forward to.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's get close to wrapping it up here. So, Amy, I asked the question with everybody: what does the future hold for Amy after the pandemic?
What does the future hold for any of us right now?
Yes.
Given that I've really thrown myself into creating stuff lately, I hope that there's going to be a lot of new music to share. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet because I've actually been experimenting with some kind of doing some producing of my own at home. Right. So normally I work with a producer called Gareth Hudson, who's amazing, and I love working with him. But this situation has kind of forced me to have to look at different ways of doing things. So there might be a little bit of kind of self-produced stuff. I'm not sure.
That's really cool.
We'll see. Yeah, hopefully some shows eventually. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and continue with the working with the mental health side of it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely, like I said, my goal is just to kind of try and support my community as much as I possibly can.
Yes.
Using whatever resources I have. I don't have all the answers, but I do want to be able to help in whatever way I can.
Yeah, and play in Newcastle.
Yes, please.
In Newey. And let's keep the music, the live music in Newcastle happening, and because it's super important. It's for a lot of people here in Newcastle. We've always had a good scene. And I'm trying my best to promote new music here as well. So let's hope we can keep it going. So, Amy, where can we find you on social medias?
You should be able to find me on most of them. So I have a Facebook page and Instagram. I have a website. And you can find me on all the streaming services as well. Just Amy Vee, AMYVEE.
Awesome. All right, that's for our international listeners as well. I'm sure, like I said before, the Newcastle You've been playing for a while now in Newcastle, so it's very predominant, Amy Vee. So, all right. So to finish off, I just have a couple of random questions,
Okay.
and just like your top 2 or 3 or top 5, and we'll finish it off that way.
Okay.
Are you ready, Amy?
As ready as I'll ever be. Yeah.
Okay. So, your top 3 musical influences as growing up.
Oh, probably Radiohead is one of my big influences.
Nice.
Elbow, I love the band Elbow.
Yes.
And I don't know. I'll say Jeff Buckley because I mentioned him before. Yeah.
Nice. What was the last book that you read?
Oh, I don't get a chance to read many books these days. I have very young children, and also because I'm studying, so I kind of tend to be a bit read out. I do have it up on my shelf there. I started reading Stuart Coupe's book, Roadies. I don't know if you've seen that one. Stuart Coupe is an Australian music journalist. He just released a book on Paul Kelly recently as well, which is doing quite well. But yeah.
All right. And besides Australia, where is your favourite sort of international countries?
My favourite place to travel, or
travel. Yeah.
That's so hard. I love going to the UK just because I have a lot of family there and friends, and I feel a connection to there because my grandparents were from there. So
right.
I'll say that for now.
And where are you going to next? Do you have plans to travel overseas in the future?
It's a bit hard to plan anything at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. But would you like to go somewhere next, like a country or?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of places I'd love to go.
Yes.
I'd really love to. I've never been to France, so I'd love to go to Paris. I have a friend who lives in Barcelona. I'd love to go there.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, lots of places.
Right. And last one. What are your 3 favorite actors?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one. Oh God, I can't even think of an actor at the moment. You've stumped me. Oh gosh. I can't think. I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right. And what was your first album?
The first one I ever bought?
That you bought, yes.
The first album I ever bought it was the Bad Loves.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
It was their first album. Get On Board or something it was called? Yeah.
And finally, what was your last album that you bought?
The last album I bought. Husky. One of my favourite Australian bands called Husky from Melbourne. I just bought there. They've got a brand new record called Stardust Blues, which is amazing.
All right. And what was your first album?
The first one I ever bought?
That you bought, yes.
The first album I ever bought it was the Bad Loves.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
It was their first album. Get On Board or something it was called? Yeah.
And finally, what was your last album that you bought?
The last album I bought. Husky. One of my favourite Australian bands called Husky from Melbourne. I just bought there. They've got a brand new record called Stardust Blues, which is amazing.
Awesome. And that was going to be one of my questions that I forgot. But besides Husky, are there any other up-and-coming local bands or Australian bands that you're really into at the moment?
Look, there's probably lots.
Yes. Any recently, or is it Husky? Husky's the one that you're.
Well, I've actually been following them for a number of years, and I'm a bit obsessed with them. I think they think that I'm one of those weird fans because I'm not normally like that with with artists. Like, I don't obsess about stuff, but there's something about their music that just really gets under my skin. So yeah, I've been listening to them quite a lot.
Awesome. All right, Amy, I appreciate your time. Truly inspirational. Keep playing your music, keep creating music and making people happy, and all the best for the future.
Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you.
All right, you too. Okay, bye for now.
Take care.